Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me, as always, my co-host, Stephen Young of RotoGrinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. And this week, we're talking bets for the Great American Getaway 400 at Pocono Raceway here on Running Hot. Last weekend at the Chicago Street Course, Alex Bowman took the win using some old wet tires to hold off a few hard-charging Toyotas on fresh slicks, including Christopher Bell, who ended up getting caught up in a wreck. Tyler Reddick made a charge, finished second, and Ty Gibbs came home in third. Alex Bowman with the win, locking himself into the playoffs, leaving Chris Buescher on the bubble and Ross Chastain one spot ahead of him. Stevie, I know we'll talk a little bit about the playoff picture, but overall first, your thoughts on the Chicago race weekend, another rainy Chicago street course race?
The Xfinity race was phenomenal. And I got so excited, not saying the rain Chicago race on Sunday was bad, because I don't think it was bad. I want NASCAR to run good one time, and we actually get to see this track on dry tires because it's so fun to watch. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's nothing crazy. It's so different than road course racing because there's just no room for error, and we see guys have to let off. We see a lot of passing, which you don't expect there to be a lot of passing, but overall, though, I absolutely loved it. Happy for Alex Bowman. He has been getting a lot of crap, and he's been running better. He just hasn't had the race-winning speed, so happy for him. I don't think he wins that race if Brad Keselowski doesn't door Ty Gibbs. I think Ty Gibbs wins that race if him and Keselowski don't get into it. Because, Bell was fast, but Reddick and Gibbs were coming. One more lap and Bowman doesn't win that race. So I think the fact that Keselowski held up Ty Gibbs and Reddick was able to get around Ty Gibbs. I think that is.
I don't know. I think Bell wins that if he doesn't get wrecked.
I agree 100%. Yeah. Any of those three Toyotas.
Even if Ty Gibbs was catching Bell, I don't think Bell is going to let Ty Gibbs by, especially after Coda, when Ty Gibbs held up Christopher Bell. So, either way, you're right. I think the Toyotas had the best chances, and they all had little things that caught up with him. Tyler Reddick was going to win that, but then he hit the wall. He was closing in on Bowman on that last lap there. Then he hit the wall. So either of those three Toyotas could have won, it seemed like, but just little things kept them from winning. But yeah, it was a great race. I loved it. I wish they'd started sooner. If they'd started it 2 hours sooner, they could have gotten the whole race in even before the rain came. Certainly 2 years in a row, it sucks to have a rain shortened race affect everything. So hopefully they go back to the streets of Chicago and we get a dry one next year, maybe starting a little bit earlier. But we are on to Pocono this weekend. Pocono, a 2.5 mile tricky triangle, as they call it, 3 turns, different radiuses, different banking in each turn, obviously different length straightaways. So certainly a track that's difficult to drive with 3 different sets of corners, 3 different ways of approaching each turn. Also, it's flat banked. These turns, while they do have different degrees of banking, they're all on the flatter side of things. So I categorize it as a large flat track, along with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which will be at next week, which is another 2.5 mile flat track. So, obviously that's going to be the comparable track, the biggest one. But first, let's just talk about racing at Pocono, Stevie. It's one of those 2 tracks like Indy where it's an oval, but if you're close enough to the leader, you can pit and remain on the lead lap, which kind of changes things in terms of how pit strategies work, and also changes the racing a little bit. So talk about racing at Pocono.
Yeah, we talk about short pitting and being on the optimal strategy on road courses all the time, but we're right back at it this weekend at Pocono because you can pit and not lose a lap at the end of the stages and put yourself in the better position for the drivers that stay out. So, you can gain track position on pit road and making the right strategy calls at Pocono. Racing at Pocono is really fun because we see a lot of drafting, we see a lot of moves, we see a lot of blocking. But the thing that we need to highlight the most at Pocono is the restarts. These restarts are incredibly wild. We'll see 3-4 wide. We'll see issues. We had a lot of cautions last year because of restarts. Cautions breed cautions. Restarts breed restarts. And I mean, it's just overall racing at Pocono is a little bit more unpredictable because of strategy, because of the restarts. I think we'll be able to pinpoint where a lot of the speed is going to come from this weekend, but it's more of like being on the right strategy. You might be more amped to take like a longer bet on other stuff because of so much can happen at this racetrack.
Absolutely. And Pocono, most people, when you ask them their favorite NASCAR track, they'll tell you, a Bristol or a Martinsville or, Daytona or Talladega, some of these, more popular tracks. Pocono's my favorite racetrack on the whole circuit. I love Pocono. I wish we had 2 500-mile races there every year like we used to have back in the day. I just think it's such a great track. It's, I wouldn't say super unique, but it is kind of a unique style of racing. I love the strategy element. I love that it's speed that matters as well. So it's a combination of strategy and speed. You could pass. You mentioned the crazy restarts. It's just a great track. And honestly, Pocono's had some amazing races in the next gen era, especially. So I think this car races really well at Pocono as well. But yeah, let's talk about it. Some comparable tracks. Obviously, we have Indy Motor Speedway, but we haven't run on the IMS Oval since 2019. So how are we handicapping Pocono maybe from a comparable track standpoint?
Well, I mean, from a comparable track standpoint, it's really tough because, like you said, Indy is the best comp. We haven't run there in a long time. So I think we'll be looking at recent Pocono data. I think we'll be looking at recent speed in general. And this is the same tire that we ran at Nashville, Vegas, Kansas, and Texas. None of those tracks are very comparable to this one. I mean, Nashville is a larger, flat oval as well, but it has a little bit more tire wear than Pocono. So looking at Nashville a little bit, looking at those other other 3 tracks a little bit, but recent speed, like you got to have speed at Pocono. This is a big racetrack. There's 3 long straightaways and you need speed. So, I mean, my thing that I'm going to be looking at the most this weekend is who's been fast this year.
Yeah, exactly. And you just said that. Who's been fast this year? That's the number one variable in my model is what's your current performance, equipment, and speed. How have you been performing and what is your speed? As far as comparable tracks, my model, I have a model that uses something called a feature selection algorithm. So I don't choose the variables. It picks the best ones that gives the highest predictive power. And it's using track type history. And when I say track type, I mean Pocono itself and Indy Motor Speedway, if you have some drivers that go that far enough back that data matters. But it uses performance on those 2 tracks also as a type quality rating. So if you compare, I talk about this a lot on this podcast, but if you take a driver's average track, how is both Pocono and Indy compared to a driver's average track? That is the track type rating that I'm using. And not only how fast are you, but how well are you relative to other tracks as well? Both of those variables come in pretty important to me. As far as other comp tracks, I don't hate pulling in a little bit of Gateway as well. It uses the intermediate package. It's flatter. And of the flatter tracks, it's 1.25 miles, so a bit bigger, and has, in some ways, some turns that are a little bit like Pocono, but I'm not like using Gateway a ton. It's more just like if I like a driver already and Gateway's an added data point, then it's, a little bit extra supporting evidence. So I think that's interesting. We talked about strategy at Pocono. Looking at the playoff picture here, Stevie, we talked about this. Alex Bowman in the playoffs now, but on the bubble, Chris Buescher, he is ahead of Bubba Wallace by 45 points. And so Chris Buescher is in, Bubba Wallace is out by 45 points. Just ahead of Chris Buescher, 8 points ahead, is Ross Chastain in the second to last playoff position there. And then Ty Gibbs is 39 points to the good over Chris Buescher. And the reason I say 39 points to the good over Chris Buescher is because if somebody outside the playoffs wins in these next 6 races, then Chris Buescher is out and he becomes, the person we need to compare to. So that's why I'm saying Ty Gibbs only 39 ahead of Chris Buescher. I don't think he should consider himself safe by any means as well. So when we're talking playoff picture and knowing how Pocono can kind of have a little bit of pit strategy like a road course in some ways, are we thinking at all about pit strategies when we're handicapping?
Yes. I mean, yeah. I mean, the simple answer is yes. I don't think anyone besides Martin Truex Jr. should feel safe on points right now. Like, he has a big enough gap to tie Gibbs, and he has a lot of speed. So I think Martin Truex Jr. feels pretty good at where he's at. But I mean, we still have Daytona, we have Darlington, we have these two big Pocono Indy races. We have Michigan coming up. Like, I mean, you could see a new winner at any 5 of the last 6 tracks. I think Richmond you're going to see one of the top end guys win at Richmond. Maybe a Chris Buescher. He was really
maybe
fast.
Not with the tires,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
another wild card there.
So anyway, that's for another conversation. But yeah, I mean, points wise, like, I feel like Truex is the only person that should feel good about where he's at points wise. So I think Gibbs, Chastain, Buescher, Bubba, Briscoe, Kyle Busch, like, they're all trying to win. They're going to be on the optimal strategy to try to win this race. Martin Truex Jr. stayed out for points last year when he had the opportunity to short pit in the first stage, but everybody short pitted in the second stage last year because there was a caution with like 4 or 5 laps to go. And then Kyle Larson got spun running in the top 5. He got messed up on pit strategy and still had a chance to win the race when Denny doored him into the wall with like 2 to go. So he was really fast last year. But anyway, yes, we're looking at who could potentially stay out, who's not going to stay out, and trying to figure that out. We're going to talk about this with some of our bets too. So yes, we are looking at this week.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to think Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, Ty Gibbs at least have to consider points racing. I think Bubba Wallace, 45 points out. He can't really rely on points, so probably going to be on a winning strategy there. But that's probably a little bit of where I am as far as like potential going off of some kind of optimal strategy and points racing. Any other intangibles to handicap here for Pocono before we get into our picks?
Nothing really. Like, I think recent speed is just so important. I just wanted to hammer that home one more time. So like, if you take out recent like road courses and you're just looking at like recent intermediate package races, that is the leading factor for me this week.
Absolutely. Right there with you. Agree 100%. So let's get into those bets. As always, we're going to take you for a lap around Pocono. Only 3 turns at Pocono, but some say there's 5. So we'll pretend there's 4 turns, or what turn 4, I guess, as their slogan is. 1 pick from Stevie, 1 pick from me each turn before we drive into victory lane. So we're going to wave the green flag on the Great American Getaway 400. Go, 6, 7, 8 wide into turn 1. All right, Stevie, turn 1, you're going to lead us in here. What do you got? Looks like you're going straight to an outright.
Yeah, I said this on the Roto Grinders Discord last week on like Wednesday or Thursday. I said Pocono, Tyler Reddick better than 8-1. I'm instantly betting him. Got it at plus 950. He's been fantastic at Pocono in general. He's had a lot of speed here. He's had an opportunity to win like 3 of the last like 6 races. His recent speed is phenomenal. He had a chance to win this race last year, right behind Denny. Just overall, Tyler Reddick is really fast at Pocono. He's been really fast recently. And I said to myself in my head, if he was better than 8-1 anywhere, I would instantly bet it. So it's just me sticking to my word and putting money where my mouth is. So, yeah, I mean, I absolutely like where Tyler Reddick is at recent speed-wise, and I really like where Tyler Reddick is at Pocono in this Toyota.
Yeah, absolutely. Right there with you. Tyler Reddick is 5th in my average finish. He's 5th in my win probability. Tyler Reddick, if we look at my type quality rating, has the 10th best track type quality rating. So again, meaning Indy and Pocono, which for him is mostly just Pocono. I think there's 1 Indy race in there. But Tyler Reddick, very strong at this track type. And when I say 10th, that's still good. He has like a positive 12.5, 13% rating at this track. So he's like 12.5, 13% better at this track type than his average track. And when, some road courses are in there bringing that average up, he's got to be good at this track type as well. So really like that bet there, Stevie. Tyler Reddick to win. For my turn one pick, I'm going to go to his 2311 Racing teammate, Bubba Wallace to win. I got him 41-1 earlier in the week. Overnight, he moved. So by the time we're recording this podcast on Thursday morning, he is 34-1 now, I think is the best available. Maybe a 35-1 out there. Still like that. Definitely have that as value in my model. Also going to take Bubba Wallace's top 10. See some plus 160s out there, plus 140s out there. So I love just betting Bubba Wallace in general. First of all, this is one of Bubba Wallace's best track types, obviously along with super speedway racing, drafting track racing. He's been great at both Pocono and Indianapolis throughout his career. Back when he was with Richard Petty Motorsports, he had a 3rd place finish at Indianapolis, a 9th place finish at Indianapolis. In 2311, he has had a 5th place at Pocono. Even in that 2021 year when 2311 wasn't quite up to speed yet in their debut year in the NASCAR Cup Series, he had a 5th place at Pocono. So this is a great track type for Bubba Wallace. Also, he's just performing incredibly well, and he has to go on the winning strategy here. We talked about this at the top. He is outside of the playoff picture looking in, probably not going to point his way in. So I think they got to be aggressive and go with the strategy that's going to try to get them the win. So we're on 2311 in turn one, Stevie.
Yeah, I bet this already, outright, and his top 10. I'm right there with you on Bubba Wallace and the fact that where he's at points wise, and they were aggressive last year at Pocono. So I feel like if you're Bubba Wallace, you're probably looking at 3 races where you can win before the end of the regular season. You're looking at this race, you're looking at Indy, and you're looking at Daytona, potentially Michigan.
Yeah, I was gonna say Michigan.
Yeah, so. Yeah, I think he's going to be aggressive this weekend, pitch strategy wise. And I mean, again, we could potentially see 1 to 3 more winners outside of the playoff cut line. I mean, Kyle Busch is down here. Josh Berry's had some races where he's had upside. So, yeah, don't instantly lock in any of these guys. So I think Bubba has to be aggressive this weekend.
Absolutely. Right there with you. So turn one is the 2311 outright turn plus Bubba Wallace, a top 10. So we're going to take that long straight away into turn 2. All right, Stevie, turn 2, the tunnel turn. What do you got here for your second pick?
Yeah, I'm going to my guy, Kyle Busch. It's been a rough year for Kyle Busch, but his top 10 right now is plus 105. This is a fantastic racetrack for him. He's been really fast at Pocono throughout his career. He knows how to win here. They were fast last year. They had the right strategy last year and just kind of got caught up in some of the mess last year as well. So him and Austin Dillon spun, had some issues, and then got wrecked by Tyler Reddick late in that race and ended up getting knocked out. So this isn't a recent speed thing. This is a Kyle Busch is good at Pocono. His top 10 is plus odds. I'm going to take a shot on him because he's very capable. And I mean, where they're at points wise, they're not running for stage points. Kyle is trying to win 20 straight years. They're going to be on that winning race strategy, which also boosts his odds for a top 10 here. So this is more kind of a gut feeling type play, and we got to have these in there every once in a while.
Well, to go with your gut, I got some data to back it up, at least in terms of my model. I have Kyle Busch as 9th in win probability and 10th in average finish, with an average finish if he doesn't DNF right around that 10 number. So getting some plus money, I think, is pretty solid here. Do like Kyle Busch this weekend. The guys at NASCAR.com, they've been doing something called a 36 for 36 competition. I've been doing it myself with Jordan Maccabee of Rotoballer, and I almost picked Kyle Busch in 36 for 36 this week, but then I ended up changing it to Ty Gibbs, but definitely like Kyle Busch this week as well. For my turn 2 pick, I'm going to go to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I'm going to take his finishing position under 20.5. So in other words, for him to get a top 20 finish, You can get that at minus 115. I got it at plus 115. Again, one of those that moved overnight from when I took it to by the time we're recording this podcast, but I still like minus 115. Let's look at Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s Pocono results with his current team, JTG Doherty Racing. In 2020, he finished 17th and 15th. Those are both better than 20. 2021, he finished 15th, and then he finished 38th, but that was a DNF. That DNF, he had a top 20 car in flags. He ran top 20 all race. He was a top 10 in stage 1. Just, of course, ended up getting involved in an incident and not finishing, but he had a top 20 car. 2022, he finished 18th. Again, a top 20. Last year, he finished 7th, another top 20. Every single one of those races, he was top 20 in my flags metric, which I think is probably the best metric of true speed because we're only looking at each car's healthy laps, similar strategies, etc. So Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has been a top 20 car every race in a 6-race sample size with JTG Doherty at Pocono. So yeah, of course I'm going to take him at minus 115 for a top 20 finish. What do you think there, Stevie?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love this. I already told you pre-show. This is one that I was like, man, I love this bet, Nick. So, like, not only like does he have like upside with potential speed, but Mike Kelly is very, very aggressive strategy wise. So there'll be times where it definitely hurts him, but we know he's going to short pit. We know they might stay out longer than everybody else in the final stage to potentially catch a caution, and they might pit earlier than everybody else to try to gain track position that way. So, like, this is Mike Kelly and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Mike Kelly kind of gets overlooked, but yeah, he is a phenomenal crew chief that has a ton of upside.
Yeah, and this team can make horsepower. This team can make speed. 17th at Vegas, 16th at Kansas. Had to me, a top 5 car at Texas before getting, screwed, for lack of a better term, on the pit strategy stuff there and finishing a lap down. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s performed well at the higher speed intermediates this well as year. So 2 turns down, 1 turn plus a phantom turn to go. But before we get to turn 3, I want to remind you all, Running Hot is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Stevie, 2 turns down. Let's go into the final real Pocono turn and take a dive into turn 3. All right, Stevie, turn 3. I really like these bets, especially 2 of them, but I think I can get on board with the third one as well. You've got 3 top Ford bets. Let me hear them.
Yeah, so I usually call these like funsy bets, but my model is showing value on all 3 of these, and I don't know if I necessarily would call them funsy bets this week, but I am betting a quarter of a unit on each one of these top Ford bets. So I have Josh Berry at 18-1, Todd Gillen at 25-1, and Michael McDowell at 25-1. And the reason that I'm betting all 3 is obviously increasing my chances here with 3 drivers that are big plus money bets. But we'll start with Michael McDowell. He's below the cutoff line. They've had plenty of speed. They've had a lot of qualifying speed just in general this year. So potentially good track position to start for McDowell, a very aggressive crew chief that definitely is going to be short pitting and be on the potential winning strategy to give him the best track position. Josh Berry. We have Josh Berry, who has Rodney Childress at the helm. Kevin Harvick was always great at these larger flat tracks. He was in the running to win this race last year before he had a couple incidents late in the race. We know that the setup's going to be good for Josh Berry, and Josh Berry is a wheelman, so I'm just betting on him because it's Childress, Berry, good strategy. And then lastly, Todd Gillen, a guy that, I mean, he's finished top 20 in 8 straight races, and he continues to just outperform where we all thought Todd Gillen was going to be this year. In the truck series, he was always really good on flatter tracks. We talk about him on road courses. He's good at braking. And he has a crew chief that has just been absolutely knocking it out of the park with strategy. So 3 Fords that could potentially be on good strategies. Busch might points race. Austin Cindric has a win. Brad Keselowski has a win. Blaney has a win. Logano has a win. If any of those Fords stay out, I mean, we saw it with Logano last year in stage 1. He had an opportunity to win the stage. He stayed out. He won, and then he was involved in a wreck right after that.
Yep.
The restarts are crazy. A lot of Fords are in a good spot. I'm going to take these 3 Fords. Not obviously, I'm taking them at a quarter of a unit apiece. And I mean, this is one, again, I usually call it like a funsy bet, but I have a lot of interest in this one this week.
Yeah, I love McDowell. I love Josh Berry. McDowell is really good at this track type as well. He has the 7th best track type quality rating per my numbers here. So fantastic track type for McDowell. Josh Berry, I'm going to talk about him with my pick in this turn. Todd Gilliland's the only one I don't technically have value on for this bet, but the way that team is running right now, and like you mentioned, the aggressiveness with the strategy calls, I can get behind that as well as kind of a funsy bet for me based off my numbers. So I'm with you. I'll play all 3 of these in this turn. Definitely McDowell and Josh Berry, and I'll funsy bet the Todd Gilliland one as well. So I mentioned it, my turn 3 pick. I am going with Josh Berry. I'm going to tail, again, Jordan McAbee of Rotoballer. He tracked this in the Action Network app earlier this week. You can still get Josh Berry's top 10 at plus 450. I love this bet. I mean, look, Josh Berry is in that number 4 car. The car that Kevin Harvick drove here was always very, very good here. I mean, granted, Kevin Harvick was always good everywhere, but Kevin Harvick particularly good at Pocono as well. And when you look, especially last year, just at this race, you'll notice that Kevin Harvick was the best running Ford. So to your top Ford bet there. It just, the Ford overall performance was a little bit down, except Kevin Harvick, it seems like. You mentioned Joey Logano winning stage 1 was certainly good, but then he got caught up in something. But overall, Ford was a little bit down here last year, but other than Kevin Harvick. So that's a start. Now let's look at Josh Berry at Pocono. At Xfinity, I should say, last year at Pocono, he led the most laps. The year before that, he finished 2nd, I believe it was, at Pocono. So 2 great races for Josh Berry at Pocono in the Xfinity Series in terms of top tier equipment with Junior Motorsports. In 2021, in the Xfinity Series, he was with Jordan Anderson Racing, and he finished 9th at Pocono in at best mid-tier equipment. So just a fantastic run for Josh Berry at Pocono in like I said, not very good equipment. In the Truck Series, he had his 2nd best finish in the Truck Series at Pocono. So this is just an incredibly good track for Josh Berry at a track where Rodney Childers, Kevin Harvick always nailed it here. So I like Josh Berry for a top 10 finish, plus 450 in addition to your top Ford bet. But almost the top Ford bet is I would say better, simply because if he's finishing in the top 10 and you're getting plus 450, you may as well get 18-1 for a top Ford, because he may be the only Ford that ends up in the top 10 if the performance is similar to last year.
Yeah, I just I jumped on this as well. I'm with you. I don't know why I didn't bet it last night, but I'm betting it now. And I mean, I've already given you my thoughts. I really like Josh Berry and Rodney Childers, man. I think it's undervalued how good this car has been this year. It's been top 10 or outside the top 20, and that's exactly what we want. So, yeah, hopefully he's the top Ford and gets home this top 10.
Absolutely. So we have 3 turns down, and you know what? Turn 3 is the biggest, longest turn, so we'll count that as 2 turns and dive into turn 4. All right, coming out of turn 3, really coming out of turn 4, as we're calling it here, Stevie, what is your final pick for the Pocono race?
I'm not stopping now, baby. Ty Gibbs, 15-1. Bet is outright. Not only did I say, if Tyler Reddick was anything better than 8-1, I said any Toyota car that has speed. Bubba Wallace was one of them. I already bet his outright. Came in at 15-1 or better. I'd bet them because of how good Toyota was here the last 2 years. Ty Gibbs is fast. We know he's fast. We know this is the type of racetrack that he could win at. Looking through all the data, last year, Ty Gibbs got a lot better from where he was at first year, kind of filling in when he was doing that fill-in job with Toyota. So he started the race kind of slow, but he was one of the best cars towards the end of the race last year, and ranked top 3 in my model as speed late in that race. So Absolutely love Ty Gibbs at 15-1. Again, we get another Toyota. I think Ty Gibbs was 4th in overall green flag speed last year. So a guy that's fast. We know the win is coming, and I'm so pot committed now that I'm not going to stop when I get it at 15-1.
No, you really can't. And like I mentioned, I took Ty Gibbs as my 36 for 36 driver this week. So definitely like Ty Gibbs. I don't really have anything else to add. He pops in my win probability model up in the top 5 in win probability. Now, if you're worried about him points racing, he could. But even if he points races, he could still win this race. We just saw Alex Bowman points race and then win. Granted, it was a race shortened race, but that doesn't make it impossible. If you have a fast car like Ty Gibbs, and this is a good track for him, definitely want to back Ty Gibbs here. So my turn 4 pick, I'm going, it's not a funsy bet. I technically have model value on this. I'm going AJ Allmendinger for a top 10 finish at 9-1. I worry a little bit about the recent speed. However, if we look at AJ Allmendinger at the most recent 2 intermediates, the only 2 intermediates he's run that have been higher speed, he finished 11th and 13th at Dover and Nashville. So that's pretty solid. That's right on the borderline of top 10 finishes, finishing 11th and 13th. And if we look at last year, Colleague Racing had 2 really fast cars. AJ Allmendinger was 11th in green flag speed and 12th in my flags metric. So if you're 12th in true speed and you're 9-1 for a top 10, that's crazy. Yeah, he finished 17th. There was a lot of, we talked about it, mayhem, crazy restarts, all sorts of things. And then Justin Haley, his teammate, was 16th in green flag speed and in flags. So 2 top half cars, one that was near the top 10 in terms of just raw speed at this track last year. Pocono's a good track for AJ Allmendinger. He's been very good. Xfinity Cup, good in terms of the track type quality rating. AJ Allmendinger with a positive track quality rating as well. If we do want to pull in, this is where I mentioned at the top, if we do want to pull in a little bit of Gateway, he's been in 10th and 14th at Gateway in the 2 years that he's run in Colleague Next Gen car. So again, a top 10 and a borderline top 10 finish, if that matters at all. Pocono, like we talked about, tends to have wild restarts. Strategy can come into play. That brings those long shot top 10s into play. So I'm going to go roll the dice a little bit with AJ Allmendinger for a top 10 finish at 9-1.
Yeah, we just bet him for a top 10 at Nashville, and he finished 11th in that race. Like, this is a type of racetrack that AJ's good at. These flatter racetracks that have a lot of speed where you have to be really good at, like, knowing when to let off, when to brake. This is why he's so good at road courses. And I think that this is a really, really solid number. So, yeah, I mean, I have no issues betting AJ's top 10 here.
Yeah, so there we have it. 4 turns at the 3-turn track at Pocono. Only one thing left to do and drive into victory lane. Stevie, I didn't really leave you an option with this one. I put it in the outline and I knew you would agree. So what is our victory lane pick?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, there's always times where you and I are just really on something together. And this was, I mean, you didn't even have to ask me. You already knew that I was going to bet this one as well. But we're going to go to Toyota race winning manufacturer here. 1st, 3rd, 5th, 6th, and 7th in my chances to win this race. Like, the only people that are up there are Kyle Larson and William Byron to have a chance to win this race outside of Toyota. So, I mean, it's Hendrick versus 5 capable winning Toyotas. So give me the Toyotas here. Denny obviously has won this race. He took out Ross Chastain in the first year with the next gen car. He took out Kyle Larson last year. What's to say that, like, William Byron, it's not your turn to get taken out by Denny Hamlin this weekend? So I actually really like Martin Truex Jr. and Tyler Reddick as well. So Christopher Bell has been, his, like, recent speed is, like, the best. So, I mean, just Toyota is right there. Like, Ford had made a really good push, and then they've kind of dropped off a little bit. I think it's clearly Toyota's race to lose this weekend.
I agree with you. 100% agree with you. And you said 5 of the top 7. I have 6 of the top 8. Bubba Wallace actually is 8th in my win probability. So if you take the 6 JGR/2311 cars, they're 6 of the top 8 in win probability in my model. And here's the other thing. If somehow Legacy Motor Club is good, I'm not counting on that, but if they are, Eric Jones is second in my track type quality rating. He's been really good at Pocono throughout the years. A lot of great finishes when he was with Joe Gibbs Racing here. So, you never know. I mentioned this with Austin Cindric in terms of Team Penske. When I took Penske to win at Gateway, I was like, and you could kind of throw Austin Cindric in there. And turns out he was the 0.5% guy or whatever, 0.8% guy that did win. So you can't count out an Eric Jones or a John Hunter Nemechek, especially if restarts or strategy. What if we get like a fuel mileage race? Obviously, if the caution comes out at the weirdest time, John Hunter Nemechek could win this thing on fuel mileage. You never know. I'm not banking on it. It's very, very small win probability in my model, but every little bit adds up. I have Toyota to win at around 57, 58%. So, I'm good playing this down to minus 125, even if that's all you can get. I see there are some minus 125s out there as like the bad end of the odds. But if you can get around even money, a little bit shorter, a little bit longer, totally fine with that. So Toyota winning manufacturer as our victory lane pick. And that is going to do it for us here on the Great American Gateway 400 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. We'll be back this time next week as we talk bets for the Brickyard 400 at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, once again on the IMS Oval for the first time since 2019. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.